Okay, good morning, council, members of SLT, and the viewing public. I see that we have quorum this morning, so I call this council meeting in session. And as is usual, the first item of business is we ask all those that can to please rise, and we'll have the national anthem. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the land recognition statement, and this week, Councillor Eckert will do the honors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people.
Thank you, Councillor Eckert. Before I go down to the next agenda item, if I can have Council's indulgence, I'd just like to point out that with the coming of spring, we have a relatively new phenomena that has also come to Pelham, and that is the arrival of the tulip farms. This last weekend was the opening date. The ones I know of are 3 of them. All 3 of them are open as of Saturday. One at Belfour on Highway 20, one at Center Street between Mettler and Kilman, and the other on 16 Road between Effingham and Center Street. Took my grandkids, 4 of them, to a farm yesterday around 6:30, and I met a gentleman there who had been at that farm since 11:30 that morning. He's making a complete day out of it. They have food trucks and other activities to do, so I encourage everyone on council and, of course, all residents to visit the tulip farms. They're out in full bloom. I now turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Niznik. Be resolved that the agenda for the May 1st, 2024 regular meeting of Council be adopted as circulated.
Thank you. Any discussion, Council? Not seeing any. All in favor? I see none opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you. So now moving to item 5, this is the disclosure of any pecuniary interests.
Thank you. After viewing the agenda, is there any council member that has a pecuniary interest and general nature thereof to declare? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Wink and seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated and read. SC-01/2024 2024, special meeting of council, April 15th, 2024, C-07/2024, the regular council meeting of April 17th, 2024.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. After viewing the aforementioned minutes, does any council member have any additions or omissions that they would like to note? Not seeing any. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Motion carries. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. Moving to item 7, request to lift consent agenda items, and I have been advised by Councillor Niznik that she has 2, I believe, that she wanted to lift for separate discussion.
Yes, please, if we could lift 8.4.1 and 8.5.1 for discussion.
Okay. So then, Mr. Mayor, I have a motion moved by Councillor Eckhart and seconded by Councillor Kerr. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items listed for the May 1st, 2024 council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved, save and accept items 8.4.1 and 8.5.1. To
Okay.
you for discussion and vote.
Thank you. And is there any other councillor that wants to specifically pull any additional agenda items? If not, then as we usually do we not discuss these before we
do.
call the vote?
We do.
Go ahead then, Mr. Clerk.
Yeah, so perhaps we just start with 8.1, recommendations arising from Committee of Council.
Okay, excellent. Any discussion on item 8.1 on the consent agendas? Not, Councilor Kerr? No? No, okay, I see your hand waving, sorry, thank you. Okay, no discussion.
Okay, 8.2, Committee of Council, so public meeting under the Planning Act. Any discussion on that?
Okay, any discussion on that agenda, on the Planning Act? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
8.3, staff reports of routine nature for information. There's 2 reports there, if there's any discussion.
Okay, and I see I have one, I'll first take it to council. Council member have any items? I have one on 8.3, and that's a feasibility study on the sidewalk linking Fenwick and Fond Hill. I'm just wanted to say that I'm glad to see this project is continuing to move forward, and I believe it's the 3rd quarter to the Director of Public Works that feasibility study would be completed. Did I read that right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we have taken the first step of retaining a consultant to do an overview of what would be required to undertake a study. And they're going to look at some options for us as part of that initial study, but what will come back to council will be a budget number to move forward with the next phase, which would be a complete feasibility study and overall costs of what a project could entail, with some options for different connections. So that will be coming forward as a first step, and then that'll be presented to council, and you'll have the opportunity to endorse or not and move forward as we proceed to that way.
Yep, well, we look forward to the eventual staff report on this project moving forward. Any other discussion? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Okay, so moving over past 8.4.1, we'll go to 8.4.2, the Pelham Care Thank You Note, just for council's information.
Okay. Councilor Olson?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, a comment on 8.3.2, which is the Wellspring Way landscape feature. I think this was done in a very smart way, because it was the staff plus the garden club who came up with this program, and I think we ended up with a real nice feature right beside Wellspring and across from the MCC, in a spot where people can go and enjoy the outdoors. And it's going to be when it grows in, I'm sure it'll be a wonderful thing. So my hats off to the staff and to the garden club for this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I have noted myself as I've driven through by the Wellspring that it's planted and ready to grow, as they say. Any other comments? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So moving again to 8.4.2, just a thank you note if there's any comments or questions.
Not seeing any.
Moving past 8.5 to 8.6, advisory committee minutes. We could probably deal with all of those minutes in one session, so I'll turn it back to you for any questions or.
Okay. Any questions on the 8.6 and those items? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
So having finished that part of the consent agenda, if we could pass the resolution now, we could call for the vote on the
okay.
consent.
So excluding the items brought up by Councilor Nesnick,
Correct.
then any other discussion on any further items? Not seeing any. All those in favor? See no one opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So now moving to the items that were lifted for separate consideration. The first one is 8.4.1, the City of St. Catharines, urgent need for increased funding for libraries in Ontario. So that was lifted by Councillor Niznik.
Councilor Nesnick, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I would like our council to consider supporting this and also sending a letter to Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, in support of this. It originated from the Town of Lincoln Council resolution about urgent need for increased funding to our libraries and museums. We've not had any increase in a long time. The letter was self-explanatory. It's been about 15 years since the libraries have seen any increase in funding. And of course, you know, books and buildings and staffing have certainly continued to rise. So it's really limited the ability for libraries to stay current, and it is one of the hubs of our community, so I would like to also endorse this notification to the ministry. If I could have do I ask for a seconder, or?
I'll turn to the clerk.
Yes, if Councillor Niznik's making that as a motion, we would need a seconder.
And Councilor Wink, you will second?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion? Councilor Olson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This falls under a relatively modest amount of money that libraries and the museums receive. It's called the CMOG program. It's $5 million for 160 community museums. And more to the point, we also receive Pelham Historical Society, which is one of the heritage organizations under the Ontario Heritage Commission. They receive a grand total of $230,000 a year for 160 organizations, which means that an organization like Pelham Historical Society receives $1,800 a year if they apply, and you have to apply every year. So if I could propose an amendment to that and add in the heritage organizations such as Pelham Historical Society, then I would be happy to support this because I think it's the right thing to be doing. Thank you.
Councilor Nesnick? Okay, thank you.
That would be terrific.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councilor Eckert?
Just a question on the motion, which I'm in full support of. I noticed the other day in the paper that the City of Thorold received $6.2 million from the federal government for their museum. Are we limiting ourselves asking for the province, or are the libraries looking federally as well for any grants? Do we know?
We'll turn to the CEO for that.
Well, this, the item before council at the moment has to do with operating, and ultimately municipalities are creatures of the province, and the province, so would be, assuming you were going to ask for an upper order of government to help with operating, it would be the provincial government with the appropriate one. It is true Thorold was spectacularly successful in a grant application for a new cultural center, but that goes to capital, not to operating, and that is something the feds are willing to help with on occasion. We ourselves used to have a $5.4 million grant from the federal government for a library ourselves. So it's because it's operating that it's provincial.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions on the motion? Not seeing any. So we have to vote on the amendment first. Okay, so on the, or do we just go with the amended?
If the mover and seconder are agreeable, we'll just incorporate it into the overall motion.
Excellent. So we're going to vote on the motion as amended. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So then moving to item 8.5.1 that was lifted. Again, Councillor Niznik requested that.
Thank you. Councilor Nesnick, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. So on behalf of the Pelham Culture Advisory Committee, we've had several meetings and we've set some goals for ourselves for this year. And one of those is advising council on increasing our visual appearance to the town in terms of art, and we're looking at a public arts document as well. I think that's coming to council very soon. And so we were just hoping that we could ask staff to look at the blocks out front where the arches are. We don't find those very attractive to look at. They're just plain concrete blocks. They do have the sponsors on them, but we wondered if there could be some sort of wrapping or painting or some sort of creative way that we could do this at not a huge expense either, if we could find some volunteers or make it a community event or something similar to that. So just asking staff to move forward with looking at some options for us.
Thank you. I'll turn to the CAO, not realizing what other staff member I should be turning to. I know there has been some limited discussion on this situation already. How do you see this moving forward, sir?
I think it's certainly a reasonable request. It's a prominent location in town, and certainly I think it's a best practice for us to look at what, if any, alterations can be made. The signage is inconsistent and doesn't exactly comport with our usual approach to signage next to the traveled portion of the roadway. All right, we'd be happy to provide some sort of analysis and bring back a report in about 2 months' time, if that's acceptable to council. So it gives all of May, all of June, and suggest the July somewhere. We have one meeting in July and one meeting in August, I do believe. And I can't remember if the meeting in July is before or after Summerfest, so that maybe give us, August is fine, then August would be perfect. The August meeting of council, we could have something for you and whatever analysis and options we can provide.
Great. I'll let them know.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. CEO. And of course, as of last September, I believe the Rotary Club officially signed those arches over to the town?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
So that should be, that way has been cleared then. Excellent. Any other comments on this proposal? Not seeing any, so that's staff direction?
I do have a resolution if you want, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, to the clerk.
Thank you. So I do have the motion moved then by Councillor Niznik and seconded by Deputy Mayor Wink. Be it resolved that council received the memo, Pelham Cultural Advisory Committee request, staff report on beautification options for the Pelham Arches concrete basis for information, and that council directs staff to prepare a report exploring the feasibility and potential beautification options for the arches and report back in Q3.
Thank you. Any discussion on either the resolution or on the way the resolution is written or on the resolution itself? I'm not seeing any. I'll call the vote on it. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Resolution carries.
Thanks. I'm surprised there'd be any question on how it was written.
Sorry.
Okay.
Again, there was none.
So moving now to presentation and consideration of staff reports. So we have the first one is 10.2.1, potential use of surety bonds and security development agreements. I have a motion moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Deputy Mayor Wink. Be it resolved the council will receive report 2024-0106, potential use of surety bonds in lieu of letter of credits, as security for development projects for information, and the council determine if it's desirable to permit the use of surety bonds as security for the development projects in the town of Pelham, and that if it is desirable to permit the use of surety bonds within the town of Pelham, the council directs staff to prepare a surety bond policy to establish criteria and requirements for acceptable surety bonds. Easy for me to say.
Yeah.
To you for discussion and vote, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I see Council Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, my question is for Ms. Sturton, and secondly for Ms. Quinlan Murphy. I was wondering about the mechanism that we'd be using, the financial mechanism we'd be using, and more specifically, where the risk falls. Is there an increased risk by using the surety bonds or the letter of credit? And it appears to me that the letter of credit has less risk, so.
To our legal advice, our legal person.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Olson. Yes, there is, in theory, an increased risk associated with the use of surety bonds because they are not necessarily collateralized, and there's typically a requirement to demonstrate a default by the contractor before the surety bond is triggered. However, there is a fair bit of discussion about structuring surety bond contracts in a way that provides the protections that are typically available through a letter of credit. So it is, at least in theory, possible to mitigate the risks of a surety bond by wording the contract appropriately. The only question is whether you'll get an issuer that's prepared to proceed with those additional terms, which would effectively make a surety bond equivalent to a letter of credit.
Councillor?
Yes, thank you. So we can, the architecture of the agreement can cover us in this. Does this benefit the larger developers or the smaller people?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Olson, I think the theory is that it benefits the smaller developers because when a developer is required to post a letter of credit in order to proceed with a project, they're frequently required to match the letter of credit dollar for dollar in terms of collateral. And so it ties up their financing capacity. So in theory, because a surety bond may not require that, it would allow smaller developers to increase their cash flow, potentially handle multiple projects at once. Whether they have the capacity to do that, I don't know. But I don't think it's to the benefit of the largest developers, but rather would be more beneficial to smaller than larger.
Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you for those questions. Any other comments? I turn to Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. This is from discussions with the corporate director of corporates. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We'll start over again with the microphone on.
Very good, sir.
I had discussions with the corporate services director. My problem with security bonds are they involve claims and adjustment process, and they're attractive to developers because they do not appear on a corporate balance sheet, and thus they do not diminish a company's line of credit and may not require a posting of collateral to the security by the principal obligator. So that to me is a problem. So that, because it's not showing up on paperwork, so they can overextend themselves without anyone knowing. So therefore, in my view, this is for bigger municipalities and bigger projects. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. Any other, Councillor Deputy Mayor Wink, please?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to our solicitor. We talk about, in your report, you talk about private institutions. Can you give me some examples of private institutions?
Through Mr. Mayor to Deputy Mayor Wink, I think the surety bonds are typically issued by insurers, although I'm not 100% certain on that. Perhaps Ms. Quinlan Murphy could assist.
Okay, so life insurance companies or not life insurance companies, just insurance companies in general?
That's my understanding.
Because letters of credit are provided by Schedule I banks and financial institutions, and you know, I've dealt with a lot of letters of credit in my other life, my past life, but, you know, very, very seldom were letters of credit acted upon. I agree with what's being said, that it does tie up a lot of the assets or the ability of the developer to go forward and look for other funding. So if they've got 2 or 3 projects in the go and you've got to have letters of credit on 3 different projects, there's a lot of ability to borrow funds to finish those projects. So one of the things I see is, like, we've got a lot of projects on the go right now, but they're not being moved forward. And I just wonder if, I'm just making comment, I just wonder if some of these letters of credit are holding the developers back from moving forward because they've got all these other things tied up, so they don't have the money to go forward and put shovels in the ground to finish the subdivision. So I understand that letters of credit are good income for financial institutions. Let's be blunt. But financial institutions hold all the cards on these letters of credit. And if there's a way that we can mitigate the risk, I don't see any problem in moving forward with the surety bonds. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Deputy Mayor. All right, Councilor Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question, Ms. Sturton. So the risk involved, surety versus a letter of credit. So what is the risk to the town? Are we talking about, a loss for us because we've installed infrastructure and then the project falls through? Like, where is our risk, and what do we stand to lose if one of them, it doesn't come through? And I see that, we have a method to go after that amount of money, but what money are we talking about that we would go after?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Eckhart, the value of the surety bond would cover the value of the work left undone or the default of the contractors. So the risk to the town arises primarily from the need to establish a default by the contractor and the need to have the surety honor the bond. So it's really more of a procedural risk than it is a substantive risk, right? It's just more difficult to recover under a surety bond because there are these additional procedural layers. So I think ultimately the town would be fully covered either way, either through the letter of credit, which is payable upon demand without proof of default, or the surety bond, which is potentially payable upon demand without proof of default if the issuer will agree to those terms. So, and I think all risks associated with either option are relatively low. As indicated in the report, the performance bond model is used frequently in public works. Very rarely do they have to act on those. Similarly, in the development context, we use the letters of credit, and again, very rarely are they acted on.
Councilor?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Well, Councilor Olson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ms. Sturton. Now, our contracts now, I think I might be wrong about this, but I suspect there's a holdback when the project's completed. And I'd like to know how much that is. And when it comes to a default, the relationship between the town and the contractor, that's used to resolve any differences that we might have, and that we don't have to go through some adjudication process, I guess. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Olson, I think the holdback provision would probably apply primarily in construction projects as opposed to larger development projects. Perhaps Ms. Wiens could chime in on this. I don't know the mechanism of the holdback in a larger scale project?
Perhaps I see the CEO is pushing his button, so we'll let him speak.
Well, this is certainly a complicated piece, but I think, and all the advice you've been given is correct, but I think to sort of break it down into plainer English, really here, so we have holdbacks when we're building stuff, and the surety bonds are used in the private sector all the time when we have no involvement. Here, we're talking about, and in plain English, we're talking about slightly increasing the risk, if it so pleases you, which is why this is here before you, slightly increasing the risk to the municipality. The reward or payoff is presumably a faster rate of growth in home construction. That's the risk-reward proposition before you. The work, the municipal interest, the thing that might not get done, the risk, is the last coat of asphalt on the road when you're finishing the subdivision, or putting the sod down along what will become the boulevards, or maybe the last couple streetlights. Like, it's the things that when we get a new subdivision, we wait till the very end and you make sure, it's fully compliant. Those are the things, as a practical matter, we're talking about being at risk or increased risk. As Ms. Sturton says, we think there's a way forward that some other municipalities, so this hasn't been done a lot in Ontario, and all of our examples in the report are large cities. And that's not a coincidence, because it's the large cities that are feeling the greatest pressure to build the most number of houses. And so they, in a risk-reward analysis, their councils have decided with the need for housing, which is greatest for them, it's been worth the risk, the trade-off. I can't tell you, it's literally not our job to tell you if that's appropriate for this community. We've received the ask from the development industry. We think we have a way to do it, but it does transfer some risk, and the reward is either for new residents, new homes, or for the construction industry. There isn't a direct reward for the municipality. So the question is, should we move by way of policy to take these slightly less secure means of financial security, or should we not? And who should, and is that worth the adjustment? So holdbacks, for instance, won't be impacted by this, but we don't have those for big developments. And it can take, our first term here, we closed off a subdivision that had been open for like 18 or 19 years. It was close to 2 decades. So those things really do, they happen here. This is our recent lived experience in Pelham. You'd hope you get a whole subdivision done in 3-4 years, but sometimes that's not the case, and hence this ask.
Thank you. Councillor Olson, you had the floor. Any other questions?
No further questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director of Planning, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. So this ask is really related to letters of credit that are we require now when it's a plan of subdivision or a site plan agreement to secure works that need to be done. So instead of doing letters of credit, it would be a surety bond. But also in the subdivision agreement and in the site plan agreements, they provide for reductions to letters of credit when a certain percentage of work is completed. So, for example, in a subdivision, when all the primary services are completed, so that's all your underground, water, sanitary, storm, your first course of asphalt, your curb and gutter, your hydro is installed and all your utilities are installed. There are provisions in subdivision agreements that allow for a letter of credit to be reduced once primary services are completed. We would do the same thing for a surety bond. Once primary services are completed, that bond could be reduced. We always hold back or retain a certain amount of that letter of credit until we assume the subdivision. So there's always a piece of that money that we hold back, and the subdivision agreement specifies that. It gets reduced again when it goes on to maintenance, but we're still holding on to some. And then when it comes off of maintenance and we assume it, that's when we return the last of the financial securities back. So those are clauses in the subdivision agreement. Similar clauses exist in site plan agreements. But for this ask, it would be, instead of using a letter of credit, we would use a surety bond.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Back to Councilor Olson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you for that, because that was the question I was really trying to get to, so thank you, appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Olson. Any other questions on this item? Not seeing any. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And I see none opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving now to 10.2.2. I have a motion moved by Councillor Kerr and seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that Council will receive report 2024-0101, reassignment of Fleet Unit 222 Rescue 1 from Fire Services to Public Works for information, and the Council approve the installation of a dump body on Unit 222 by transferring the funds from the one-ton truck project in the amount of $90,000, and any unspent funds will be transferred back to the Fleet Reserve for you for discussion.
Thank you. Any discussion on this item? I'll turn to Councilor Nesnick.
Thank you. Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, just maybe a question for, I'm not sure if it's Public Works or Mr. Cook. What would the cost of a new vehicle with the ton dump body already on it? Seems expensive to cost $90,000 to put the dump body on an older vehicle. So I'm just wondering about the cost analysis there, if that's been done, or if you've got a ballpark is fine. I don't need an accurate.
To Mr. Cook, please.
Through the mayor, the cost of installing a dump body on that existing vehicle is about $18,000. So the ask is really to use the $18,000 of that $90,000 budget and then put the remaining back into the reserve.
Oh, thank you. That makes sense. Okay, I was going to say $90,000 to put the dump. I misread it then. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Councilor Eckert.
And while you're there, so we take I assume, a new dump body, put it on this existing truck. A couple of years down the road, the existing truck fails. Can that dump body be taken off and put on another vehicle?
Mr. Cook.
Through the mayor, it is possible that we could take a newer dump body and install it on a different vehicle, but it really does depend on chassis size. So I really am hoping to get another 10 years out of this particular unit. So with that, hopefully I will not be here asking for another truck in 5 years to replace this one.
Different cars.
Councilor.
I think this is an excellent idea of use of town property, and whoever came up with it, kudos to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Cook, if you could, another question. Just, I don't have the report in front of me, but I believe the truck that we're talking about, it's only got 30,000 kilometers on it, doesn't it?
Yeah, through the mayor, yeah, you're correct. It's about 28,000 kilometers on that vehicle.
Yes, and I hate to say it, but lots of times we buy new equipment for the fire department, and then they don't end up using it. So. Just kidding there, Chief. So, but no, I agree for sure with Councilor Eckert. This is a great initiative, changing going from one department where it's a surplus and going to Public Works. I think it's a great initiative put forward by staff. Any other questions, comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So now moving to item 10.2.3, I have a motion moved by Councillor Nisnik and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2024-0102, the Meridian Community Center transformer failure for information, and the Council approve that any uninsured portion of the transformer be funded from the Meridian Community Center Reserve.
Okay. Perhaps this report before us is 2 weeks old, so I will ask the Director of Public Works to give us the final update before I go to council. Sir, Jason Moore?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, at the time of writing this report, it was a work in progress, and we weren't 100% sure on when the new transformer would be installed. That took place last week, and as of Friday around 1 o'clock, the new transformer was up and running and powering the MCC. So that's in place now. The old generator, the old generator has been, or transformer has been shipped to Public Works Yard in the compound until the investigation is complete. New transformer is now powering MCC, and the generator is gone.
Excellent. Thank you. Any comments on this item? Councilor Hildebrand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to first compliment staff, the contractor, the ESA, Hydro One for an excellent project. They did a tremendous job in coordinating all this in a complex issue. With regards to the size of the transformer, we now have a 1,000 kVA transformer. Transformer designs are capable of running at 115%. So if you have a transformer, it's not like a portable generator. A portable generator at 1 meg is totally different than a transformer. So I know that we're not near 700 kilowatts, so we got lots of capacity with what we have. I think it's an excellent move. The question I have is with regards to the portable generator. When we were having the meetings, the contractor suggested that we turn off the breakers for the charging stations, which are 600-volt charging stations. My question that I want answered, that I know the answer to, so that everyone knows the answer to that question is the portable generator that's a 1 meg generator capable of running the MCC and all the related facilities there?
To the Director of Public Works?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the generator that was brought on site was a 1 meg generator. It was running, it didn't see a loading of more than 400 kVA during the operation of the MCC. So that's without the one pad. And you're correct, the portable or the EV charging stations were disconnected during that period of time. But yes, and I'd have to get an electrical opinion on that from an expert, but there's tons of capacity there to power the whole facility with that 1 megawatt portable generating station.
Thank you. To Councilor Hildebrand?
Just one other question. I know we're never going to have another problem, but I don't count on Hydro One not having another problem. How long would it take if Hydro One had a problem to bring in a generator and reconnect the MCC?
To the Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with the new transformer, if there was an issue with the new transformer or Hydro One supply, because it's now there under their operation and maintenance, they state that they could have it up and running in a matter of hours, maybe a day or at the most, but they would react and move very quickly on a replacement or repair.
Councilor?
The other additional question I want answered, how long would it take us to get a portable generator there and hooked up if there was no power coming from Niagara Falls to the MCC?
To the Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the generator that was supplied, I think, came from Mississauga area, and they were on site within 4 to 5 hours of the call.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other? I see Councilor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director, do we know what the root cause of the failure was at this point?
To the Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this point, we don't know exactly. The insurers have a team of engineers and investigators that are looking into it, but at this point, we don't have an answer on that.
Thank you. Councilor?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just concerned that we just plug something in and we end up with another failure later on, because I've had this happen to me before where somebody inadvertently throws a switch and cooling system gets turned down, and the switch was thrown in the dark, and they didn't realize it was the wrong switch, so I think it's worthwhile knowing what the cause is, the root cause is, so we don't repeat this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Any other comments on the transformer? Not seeing any. I'll ask for the vote. All those in favor? And don't see anyone opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving now to item 10.2.4, I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Wink and seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2024-0098, the culvert replacement program budget exceedance for information, and that Council approve the award of the Balfour Street culvert replacement to County Line Construction Inc. in the amount of $99,875 plus the applicable taxes, and that Council approve a budget increase of $57,089.99 for project RD03-24. To you for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on this item? To a comment myself to the director, great to see that we are getting caught up in our culverts throughout the town. I know the north end of the town, we've seen many of the, I guess I call them 6-foot diameter culverts changed, and these I don't think are quite as big as them, but yeah, we must be getting caught up on our culverts that will appear in our assessment management plan, I would think. And any comment on that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we're legislated biannually, every second year, to do an inspection on all of our major culverts and bridges. So that is undertaken. So we have a very clear understanding on what the condition of those larger structures are. These are smaller ones, but still large enough that we need to go to an outside contractor to complete the work. So as part of the stormwater management, as part of the CLI, ECA programs that we're implementing now, there will be more regular maintenance and upkeep and inspection on those types of culverts. And yes, they will be assets as part of our asset management plan. They'll be tracked that way as well. So in the past, we've been lucky to get away with $60,000 worth of work for replacing these culverts. We've found with market increases that $60,000 is probably not enough now, so we're looking at increasing those amounts in future budgets as well to undertake one or two major, well, medium-sized culvert replacements a year. This is one of those.
Excellent. Thank you for those comments. Any other questions or comments on this item? Not seeing any. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Motion carries. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving now to item 11, unfinished business, 11.1. I have a motion moved by Councillor Niznik and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that Council received memo 2024-0097 titled Proposed Public Art Policy for Information, and that Council approve the appended Public Art Policy S100-16. To you for discussion and vote.
Okay, thank you. Any comment from any councillor on this proposed public art policy? Definitely was lots of reading and lots of policy in it. I'll say that much. I didn't see a staff name attached to it, and perhaps I'm wrong there. I'll go to the CEO then, please. And it covers a lot, so I imagine that all of staff had a finger in this one.
Well, you know, it does cover a lot, and a lot of staff did touch it, but I think the leader in the project is sitting in this room, and her name is Sarah Leach.
Oh.
And I think I want to defer the answer to this question. This was a staff initiative by a team of upcoming leaders in the municipality and has now had the input from the advisory committee, which leads us here today. But Ms. Leach is more than capable of leading us through the various aspects of the policy, and I don't want to take that opportunity away from the expert.
Ms. Leach, perhaps an overall view of this prospective policy, if you may.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was absolutely a collaborative effort amongst different members of pretty well each department. There were a lot of hands in making this, and there is a lot of moving parts. I would also like to thank Ms. Sturton for her advice throughout the process. We did bring this policy as directed by council to the art committee. They were very grateful of the opportunity to review it. They provided expert advice and input, helped us clarify some of the definitions and the concepts and tied it back to our art master plan. So they were absolutely valuable in the process. Overall, they were very happy with the end product here, and this will pave the way for us to bring art into the town. And it establishes a process for us to do that, working with staff and the working group.
Excellent, thank you. Excellent, okay. I have one other question, but I'll defer it. Any other comments or questions on the policy? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? I see none. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving now to consideration of bylaws. I have a motion moved by Councillor Kerr and seconded by Deputy Mayor Wink. Be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same, and that the Mayor and Clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. 1, Bylaw 26-2024 being a bylaw to regulate the use of municipal parks in the Town of Pelham, and to repeal Bylaw 1583, brackets 1993, and Bylaw number 1608, brackets 1993. 2, Bylaw 27-2024 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 4481, brackets 2022, as amended for the lands on the west side of Norgate Way, north of Summersides Boulevard and east of Station Street, and bylaw 28-2024 being a bylaw to enact an amendment to the official plan adopted by bylaw number 3259, brackets 2012 for the Town of Pelham Planning Area Amendment number 21, the East Fenwick Secondary Plan. To you for discussion and vote.
Okay, thank you. Any comments on these bylaws? Not seeing any. I'll ask the question. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now moving to notice of motions. I do have a motion moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Deputy Mayor Wink, and I'll turn it over to Councillor Olson to introduce that and present it to council.
If I may, first, I believe motions and notices of motion, I had a notice, but you're going to do the
We'll
motion?
do those notices after the prepared motion.
Thank you. I didn't mean to question you.
No
sir.
problem.
To
I
Councillor
think it would be
Olson.
a good habit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if I could have the deputy clerk read the motion for me, because it's a little long for me to read.
No problem. To the deputy mayor, or deputy clerk.
Stumbling.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, whereas accessible and efficient public transportation fosters community connectivity, promotes mobility, and enhances the quality of life for residents, and whereas on March 19th, 2024, the City of Niagara Falls passed a motion requesting the Niagara Region Transit Commission establish a discounted seniors fare that is competitive with others in the Golden Horseshoe, further seeking endorsement from all local area municipalities in the Niagara region. And whereas Council for the Town of Pelham supports the establishment of the discounted seniors fare within the framework of the Niagara Regional Transit, acknowledging the importance of affordability and accessibility for our senior residents. And whereas recognizing the potential for enhancing Niagara Regional Transit, it is imperative to explore additional avenues, such as including, but not limited to, building capacity for service reliability, expanding service hours, expanded Saturday and Sunday service, and the introduction of additional varied fare rates. And whereas Council acknowledges that the implementation of such service enhancements will directly impact the taxpayer, therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to consult the Pelham Seniors Advisory Committee the Pelham Active Transportation Committee, the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, and the Mayor's Youth Advisory Collective to gather input regarding the potential expansion of Niagara Regional Transit Services. And that staff be directed to prepare an information report for Council's consideration, inclusive of cost estimates, as well as the input gathered from the aforementioned committees.
Thank you to the Deputy Clerk. And Councilor Olson, would you like to comment on your motion?
Yes, yes, of course, Mayor, and thank you very much for reading that for me. It spared us a lot of sputtering and hums and haws and maybe some coughing and, and forgetfulness. I don't know what else could have happened, but anyway, and I want to thank the clerk, the deputy clerk, and the CAO for assisting me in writing this motion, and Deputy Mayor Wink for seconding it for me. At this time, we're fortunate we've got some of these advisory committees, because the one in particular I'm thinking about at the moment is the accessibility committee, because the regional committee is headed by a resident of Font Hill, and his deputy is also a resident of Font Hill for the entire community, and that's Reese Evans and Dan Whipple, or in the opposite order. But they do an excellent job as advocates for the disabled, and we should be grateful for the leadership that they provide. This motion is intended to make sure that Pelham's wishes are included in the new plan for the NRT, the Niagara Regional Transit, which is being updated for 2025. And at the very moment, we're basically the NRT. Excuse me. See what I told you? So basically, the NRT is the victim of its own success right now, and the problems we have are building capacity. We just don't have, excuse me, we don't have enough buses to serve the fixed routes, and we don't have enough to serve the on-demand, which comes to Pelham at the moment. Now, this has been frozen until the middle of next year by way of the triple majority agreement. So nothing can be changed there. We can't add buses. We just replace buses. We can't add new services. And all the new subdivisions that you see in Thorold and Niagara Falls and St. Catharines, they don't have bus services for that reason, because it's been frozen. And there's a lot of places up in close by here with on Pelham Street that those places don't have, all those subdivisions down there don't have bus service yet, and it'll come next year. So this motion makes it possible to put in front of the Regional Transit Commission in a timely fashion, right at the moment when the new plan and accessibility plan and everything else is going to come together for the Transit Commission, and it allows us to look at the services that we want, and we want the same services that every other municipality has, whether they have fixed route or on-demand route, and we want one fare. We don't want to have fares going back, and more importantly, we want to be able to transfer from one system to another without having to pay another fare. We want to have a one fare for the entire region. And that will include going to the GO stations and all the rest of the stuff. So that's the main objective of this. But we also want to make sure that we make use of the advisory committees, including the Seniors Advisory Committee, Active Transportation, Joint Accessibility, of course. And I think the other one, another key one, is the Youth Advisory Committee. We'd like to ask for support from that and what they really want, because there's not just going to school, but there's after-school employment, babysitting, all kinds of things. And if you could have an account on the Transit Commission as a grandparent for your grandkids to come over and visit after school. You can do all kinds of things, and the possibilities are endless with the state of technology today. But all these things bear a cost, and our community is paying $1 million a year for transit, basically. And we want to make sure that we get the right amount of it, and we don't want to add things to it that are costly that just won't get done. So that That is the main purpose of this. And this would be brought to the Transit Commission when it's finished, and it would be passed by the Transit Commission hopefully, and then presented to the Niagara Regional Council for acceptance and passage. And that's the route to make sure that we're on our needs and our requirements are on the agenda for transit. So that's the purpose and the cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Olson. I'll turn to the Deputy Mayor as seconder of the motion for any of his comments.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. When Councilor Olson brought this to me, I was more than happy to second this motion. Looking at the content and we as councilors just received an email yesterday or the day before from Reese Evans, who we all know, and he articulated it extremely well on what he has to endure. So here's a gentleman who's wheelchair bound. He had previous employment in Niagara-on-the-Lake at the Outlet Mall, and he had difficulty getting to work on a Saturday or Sunday, and sometimes he wasn't able to get to work because there's no transit system available. And then he also further went into the amount of money he would have to spend to just get to work. So like $25 one way. And so for a job that he gets paid minimum wage, he effectively probably didn't even make any money just to go to work because he had to pay on transit. We take for granted how fortunate we are. And there's a lot of people, and I just zero in on Reese, but there's also lots of seniors that can't drive, okay, because of their eyesight or whatever. And this is shutting them in, and you look at what causes mental disability and impact on mental health, the lack of transit and the mobility issue comes forward all the time. The other thing that we didn't touch on is climate, and we're looking for ways of getting cars off the road. Well, we can't get cars off the road if we don't have a good transit system. And I think we're given an opportunity to revisit our transit and what can we do as a community to limit the carbon footprint that we have. And I'd really like Councilor Olson's recommendation to go to our advisory committees and ask for their input before we assume that we're doing right and we just go to the region. We're getting input from stakeholders in our community, which is extremely important. So I thank Councilor Olson for bringing this forward and allowing me to second this motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wink. Open up to the rest of council now. Any other further comments from any councilors? Not seeing any. I know that I will definitely be voting in favor of this motion. This is a great initiative. Get the grassroots involved before policy is made is the way the process should indeed take place. So without seeing any further comments, I will call the vote. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Motion carries. Congratulations, Councilors Olson and Councilor Wink. To the clerk.
Mr. Mayor, so I have had indications from 3 council members, including yourself, that they have notices of motions to present today, Councillor Eckert, Councillor Hildebrand, and yourself. So whatever order you deem appropriate.
Let's go alphabetically. I believe Councillor Eckert wins that one. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. I will be bringing a motion at the next meeting with the help of our excellent clerks department. Did I say that right, Mr. Clerk? Thank you.
For including me.
On behalf of all residents, but the Pelham Active Transportation Committee. And it's in regards to a reduction of speed on Effingham Road, a section south of Weber, which is on our one of our bike routes, and just to make it safer for cyclists in that area. It's currently an 80-kilometer zone when most of Effingham is 50 or 60 kilometers, and it's quite a dangerous section. So that'll be my motion at the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Eckert. Who's the next?
Councillor Hildebrand.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't get that name. Councillor Hildebrand, your notice of motion.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to give an explanation why I'm bringing this notice of motion, because it has to do with the Centennial Washroom project. But it goes back to my background. Obviously, you know I was an engineering manager. Our sales were $150 million. We were running offices in Canada and India. And basically, our engineering was error-free. And I can tell you why it was error-free, because we had a quality management system, which was a formalized system of documentation, processes, procedures, responsibilities, and all the stuff. Basically, that meant we were audited just like our financials are audited. We were under the ISO 9000 audit system. So basically, my office, I probably spent a week of my time every year just with auditors, making sure our processes and procedures were right. So basically, what we had in our office were Canadian design standards. They weren't called engineering standards, and that's one of the things I'd recommend, because not only were the lawyers and the people in purchasing and the accountants and everyone responsible, under this system, it was a team. Everyone was responsible. Although I signed up over 1,000 documents a year, I was the last signature, so there were a lot of people in front of me. And that's why we were able to produce error-free things. Getting to the specifics of the draft amendment I'm going to be making, it has to do with the Centennial Washroom project. I felt partially responsible because I pulled that file before we had our final vote. It was 130 pages, 10 pages of drawings. I looked at those drawings but didn't really look at them. I found that I went back now in the final review, because after the last council meeting, it still irritated me because of my background. You'll have to forgive me for that, but it irritated me. So I did take a look at the drawings and found out that the washroom really wasn't accessible because the doorway was going the wrong way and the grading was level, which really truly wasn't the case. So that irritated me. So I said, man, that drawing wasn't right. The second thing that bothered me was when I looked at the RFQ, that the site visit was not a requirement anymore. They may all be small things, but they're the things that cause things to go wrong. And when I looked at the engineering standards we have, and like I said, we call our engineering standards Canadian design standards. I think they should be called possibly Pelham design standards, because I think they involve, I passed it, and a lot of other people passed it. So I'm not trying to throw the stones at the engineering department. I'm saying I was involved. We all took our part of it. And that on the engineering standards part of it, I didn't see anything under general requirements with regards to accessibility, and the notes with regards to pre-engineering survey and specific site meetings weren't addressed, and also the soil investigation and the soil building capacity isn't specifically addressed. So my motion coming up, which will be supported by Councillor Niznik, my partner in Ward 3, will be addressing those issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hildebrand, for that notice of motion. And myself, I have one, and based on some relatively new information that has come to staff and myself through a outside company, that it does indeed appear feasible that we can put solar panels on the MCC. So my motion will be to have staff look at the new information and go and do a complete financial breakdown of benefits of proceeding with that in the hopefully relatively near future, whether it be a year from now or however it takes to bring this study to us. We can discuss that obviously when I bring the notice of motion, or when I bring the motion forward to council at the next meeting. So that's what my notice of motion will be about. To the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Eckhart has a comment, I think.
Oh, Councilor Acker.
Sorry about this. One thing I forgot to mention in my notice of motion would be that this would be a motion from this council to the region to reduce that speed limit, because that is a section of Effingham Road that's regionally controlled.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you for that, Councilor. Any other questions? I don't see any. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Hildebrand, second by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to considering the following: personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or a local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, one item under the Normal Farm Practices Protection Board. To you for discussion.
Okay, all those in favor of going in session? And I see none opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While we turn off the streaming and that, maybe we could take a few